Of all these so traumatic cases, which one would you say has affected you the most?
Without a shadow of a doubt, it's got to be Christopher Older. And the reason for that is it was the first case that I had been involved in where I wasn't just dealing with the subject matter of death, I wasn't just looking at the witness.
So is that the schizophrenic or the black paratrooper that died? Okay, just take us through the facts very quickly. It was a black paratrooper.
Yeah, a black paratrooper. He had been in a nightclub in Hull one evening. He got into a fight. What on the face of it, sort of thing that young men do week in, week out in clubs up and down the country. So nothing particularly unusual about that. But he had been injured and went to the hospital and was acting bizarrely. Now that may well have been because he was suffering from a head injury as a result of the fight, but concussion. But the hospital couldn't cope with him. They called the police, and he was arrested at the hospital and taken to the city police station. And therein the problems began, because there were so many issues about what happened to him from the hospital until he got to the police station. He had unexplained injuries in his mouth, his trousers had been pulled down.
He was naked from the waist down.
And a lot of these questions as to why he was in that condition, the police officers, as was their right, refused to answer at the inquest. And it did call for an explanation, but I think the reason why I say this is a case that stands out and affected me the most was because it was the first time I had seen somebody die on camera.
It was recorded,
because it was captured on the custody suite CCTV. And I remember the first time I watched that footage, and I cried. And I cried because of just what I consider to be the inhumanity of one man towards another man, that here was this man in a police station, half naked, on the floor. You had police officers standing around talking about him, and he's on the floor groaning, grunting and dying. And you actually see Christopher Older die on camera. And when he dies, that's when they panic, and that's when they begin to act.
It is all caught on CCTV.
And it's all caught on CCTV.
So how did you cope with that then? Again, I've asked you before, but that being the one that's affected you the most, how did you recover? How did you sort of get yourself up and say, look, I have to represent the family?
To be honest with you, Christopher Older was one of the cases that really affected me, because not only was I dealing with this really traumatic and difficult case, but things in my personal life at the time were not good. My dad died during that case, and it really impacted on me. I was away from home for a considerable amount of time.
So you're quite emotional anyway.
I was quite emotional anyway, and despite all of that, you've got to be professional. You've got to continue. And not only was I dealing with all of those issues, it was a case where the hostility between myself and the other advocates was quite strong, and I very much felt then, and I was this happened in the 2000. Christopher Older's case was in August 2000. It was very difficult for me because I was a sole voice at this inquest, and there were so many other interested persons representing the police. The individual officers had their own separate representation. The chief constable had his own separate representation. You had the hospital had its own representation. You know, you had the ambulance service that had its own. You know, you had. And so I was against something like 9 or 10 other interested persons representing agents of the state, all against the family, and that was very difficult. And also the brother and sister of Christopher Alder were deeply affected by the death of their brother, and they wanted answers, and they weren't getting the answers that they required. And so it was a difficult case.